Welcome back once again to Coach Blake's Breakdowns. Tonight we're going through my shadow team draft haul and kind of where we're sitting at roster wise. Once again with my man Drew. How are we doing?
Doing great. Always a fun time to talk shadow teams on here.
Always a blast. Last episode we went through your draft haul, your first year getting going. I'm going into year three, my final 2 pick per round draft. So my team's pretty filled out at this point, for better or for worse. And we'll go through some of my mistakes that I've highlighted before, and then my current class, and just kind of see what we're looking at on the roster. But let's just get into it. So obviously, I started out with Shamar Stewart, 8th overall. That was actually good value for my board, I'm pretty sure, because I think I had him right around 8 or 9. Needed a D line. My goal with this class, my big focus was to turn over both trench rooms. My D line and my O line just needed a ton of help there. Just had a lot of misses and guys just not pan out. So had to bring in a lot of help. Brought in a bunch of D line that I'm hoping to have early impacts in their careers. Shamar Stewart kind of kicked that off for me. And then at 22, like I tried to do last year with Bo Nix at the same spot, I went and got my quarterback. I got Jackson Dart, who went only 3 picks later. Very controversial pick. I know you don't love the pick.
Yeah.
But I know he's slated. He's the QB3 right now, I think, technically on the roster, but I think there's a good shot that he plays a significant amount of snaps this year in New York. I always thought he was going there. I just kind of like the fit, especially when I have Malik Neighbors as most likely my wide receiver 1 by kickoff of the season. So that'll be fun. You just kind of having the stack on the shadow team. That'll be a good time to follow. But just was a big fan of Jackson Dart's game. Loved the mobility. I thought he had solid arm talent. I know you have your own thoughts, but that's my first round right there, baby.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fully with you on the Shamar pick. He was 7 on my board. We were both big Shamar Stewart guys. So I love that pick. Dart, again, I support the thought process, right? Because you had to get a QB in here. It was Michael Pratt for, sitting
needed a QB
for however long now. And Dart, like if you're shooting for playing time, he was kind of your best bet. At this point, I do think there's a realistic chance he gets in the starting rotation pretty early on, because Russ and Jameis at this point are not guys that are going to last very far into the season in my eyes. Most of my reservations are the same as everybody else's where it comes to processing, and I don't know where the arm talent is by NFL standards. To me, it was just a big question mark rather than not liking his tape. It was just a dislike of what wasn't there, what we didn't get to see. But again, thought process wise, and I think if you were going to go for a quarterback at 22, he was definitely your best bet. But yeah, I mean, overall process wise, I love the first round.
Yeah, no, Jackson Darts, I feel like I've talked about it with a few people, but I feel like the floor is Will Levis, which you don't love to see. I know as a Titans guy, you're aware of that, but I feel like the ceiling, as far as rookie year, I feel like it's either Will Levis or Bo Nix, and I think I'm okay with that variability when I just needed to get a guy in the room. Like you said, I had Michael Pratt alone. I had Sam Hartman, who didn't really do much of anything last year. I just really needed to add something to the room, and I felt good about Jackson Dart the first. And we'll take some more swings as we go. I think I ended up with 3 or 4 quarterbacks out of this class. I think only 3 because there was that late run at like the middle of the 7th round that really bit me in the ass. But moving on to day 2, I took TJ Sanders and Darius Alexander to kick it off. I needed defensive linemen. They are both great value per my board at the spots that I got them, so I felt really good about both of those grabs. Just the versatility that both of them can bring at the respective positions is what got me the most excited. And TJ Sanders ending up in Buffalo, I feel like couldn't have been better for what I need him to do. I feel like he'll be a great fit there and be productive and have a chance to get time early on. But again, turning over my defensive line room, the first 2 has started on the interior. I'm a big believer in you build your defense from the inside out. Your defensive tackles help your edge players, and your D-line helps your linebackers, and your front 7 helps your DBs. So you just start in the middle, and so I wanted to get 2 guys I felt really good about on the interior. And then top of round 3, got Cam Scatabo, who is another giant. So I have theoretically a big 3 in New York. So really rooting for the Giants offense this year, which doesn't feel great, personally, but I have faith in Brian Daboll and I love these players. I feel really good about these guys. Obviously I have Bijan over Cam, but I think it's a fun 1-2 punch. I kind of talked to you about it yesterday off air, but with Bijan as my RB1, I felt like it could have really gone any direction with the number 2 in that room. I feel like Bijan being so well rounded, I can get a thumper and still split reps fine. I get a more athletic, speedier guy, better receiving back, and still use Bijan as that thumper. So I just kind of went with the guy who I kind of passed the vibe check, right? I just kind of like his mojo, like his play style. So we got him in the room. And then right after Cam Scatabo, we go for offensive line again, turning over the other side of the ball. I went with Wyatt Milam, who some people believe has 5-position flexibility. I don't know if I love that aspect of him, and I also don't know how much I love him at tackle. But that versatility and just kind of the solid floor that I feel like he brings with him, I just like getting him, especially in the back end of the third round, onto the team in the offensive line room. I think I currently have him slated as the starting left tackle. So even though I didn't love him at tackle, I think he's the best option I got. So I'm excited to see how he kind of works out in Jacksonville. Team that has a lot of interesting potential, honestly, this season. But yeah, and then we'll go round 4 real quick because I know it's 2 players I'm excited to hear your thoughts on. The Shedeur Sanders slide ended at 109 for me, which was as we got into the later one, like 130 area, I was like, did I still reach on him? And then he ended up at, I think, 144, but I was fine taking him outside of the top 100. I still needed a quarterback. Even with Jackson Dart, it's a 1 quarterback room. I think Shedeur Sanders, I think we all felt like he was still going to the Browns. At least I did for sure. So I was okay taking him with, again, in the back of my mind, knowing he's probably going to be able to compete for some reps in that room, at least throughout the first 4 years of his contract, for his career. So kind of fine with that pick. Never wasn't high on him, obviously, but I'll take him outside the top 100. That's just great value, honestly. And then Jack Sawyer, with the shift in defense, you're already with you, starting with the Jack Sawyer hate. Just the little cough when I say his name. It's like
it was involuntary,
But no, with I kind of liked his edge versatility again. I shifted to an odd front defense, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But I like his ability to play that edge position, whether it is that outside linebacker or bump down into the line. Again, wasn't high on him, but was okay taking him in the top 150, top 125. Fine player. Again, like the energy. Not a real team, but a guy I'd love to have in the locker room. So I'm okay bringing him in.
He's locker room guy. He's a culture guy.
Like if I had a team, I'd bring in the culture guy, especially in the back end of the 4th round. So I was okay with it. But that's rounds 2 through 4. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I know a couple of these were fit, like you mentioned. You like TJ Sanders, like how the role wise where he's going to play, and I'm not intimately familiar with your defensive scheme in this, which I'm sure you'll explain after you run through this draft class. I wasn't a big TJ Sanders guy. He was like fringe top 100 for me, but I know you're going for probably the kind of specific niche role he plays. I think he's good in that role. I was a big Darius Alexander guy. I love Darius Alexander, so I'm huge on that pick. I was a huge fan of his game. Scatabo, I might have waited a little bit longer on running back just because, like you mentioned with Bijan, there's so much versatility, and this running back class was so deep that you can kind of go wherever on running back. But, I mean, if you're going to go with one, I had Scatabo in that range. I think he's just as good as any of the other options that went around that third round-ish area. I love the value for Milam. I had him earlier than that. Whether I had him as a guard, but like you mentioned, if he's your best tackle option anywhere on that line, you want to put him. I think he's, that's great value regardless. Shedeur and Jack Sawyer, those are 2 guys that I was pretty out on as a whole, obviously, but I guess technically round wise, like I had Shedeur in that area. So again, like value outside the top 100, might as well just take it. Cause again, just shooting for guys that might have a chance of starting reps. That Browns QB room is a disaster. So like Shedeur's got as good a chance as any. But again, I was pretty low on his tape. Sawyer, I can forgive you being a homer because I know you're an Ohio guy. But yeah, I never got it in the first place with him. He was a UDFA for me. I didn't see what he did like at an NFL level anywhere in his game. But again, if you're shooting for a specific fit that you think he plays in your defense, I totally understand taking that shot on day 3. But just my personal eval is a lot lower on those 2 guys. But I think we had a lot of overlap towards your later day 3. So I'm excited to get into that.
Oh, for sure. And I think my 4th round really embodies how I feel about the 4th round. I feel like I didn't get the traitsy guys that I always talk about kind of ending in that box, but just guys that were either good value. Like Shadur was screaming at me for a long time just to go get because he had slid so far, and I was like, no, if he potentially makes it out of the top 100, I'll think about it, and he did. So I just went and got it, like kind of like we both talked about already, but just felt like that was a fine grab there. It's funny enough, like at 72, I was stuck between Scatabo and Milam, and it was because I was a big Scatabo guy. That was a great value spot for him per my board, and I knew I already had Bijan, and I was kind of. But then I remembered last season, Bijan actually had, over the last couple of years, actually, he has a few, weeks where he'll just vanish, and where, or injuries pop up, and just kind of being able to get a guy to bring in who I feel confident is going to just be able to find a role. I wasn't worried about what team he landed on. I just felt like he'd be able to get on a team and just, even if it's more specific, down and distance type stuff that he's being asked to do, I feel like he'll be able to get onto the field. And again, in my final 2 pick per round draft, I was going for versatility. I was going for guys that I felt like could find a way in, could find opportunities. Just kind of need some contributors after, again, my first draft being really spotty, and just the misses in UDFA grabs that I've had over the last couple seasons. Just kind of wanted to bring some guys in that I felt like could really find ways to contribute, especially early on. So that's where, I got my guys still, like guys that I liked, but I also wanted to look for guys that I felt like had multiple avenues to make it, not just really fit something that I loved. And I was kind of with you with TJ Sanders. I felt like it was a little early for him, but I liked the player. And again, the fit that he had with where I'm trying to take my defense right now, I was just kind of interested to have him on my team and just kind of follow him along. But I realized as I headed into the 4th round, I think it was, how many Senior Bowl guys I have, especially early in my draft. And I was like, am I like a Senior Bowl? Like, is that a big thing for me? But then it was like, no, like I was looking at my board and I'm like, I didn't really bump these guys crazy, if at all, based on the Senior Bowl as far as my grading went. It was just, guys that I liked on my grading system, but they just happened to also go to the Senior Bowl. So that's just, it was kind of fun for me, and how, I've interacted with these players, and that's going to be cool as well. But I just kind of made me giggle as I was going through, and I was like, oh, wow, he was in the Senior Bowl, he was in the Senior Bowl, and I was like, oh, like my first 3 rounds were. But anyway, that was fun. But yeah, this late day 3 is going to be fun because I know we cross over with Logan Brown.
Yep.
We kind of talked about him on the last episode. Miles Frazier, another one I believe we cross over with.
Oh yeah, we both loved him.
I mean, just 2 offensive linemen again, turning over that O-line room. I went the 2 defensive linemen early, well, 3 technically with the edge. And then I went the tackle. I went with 2 guys that I felt like were solid interior guys, but I know Logan has flex. So I have Logan Brown, Wyatt Milam as guys that I felt like could play guard tackle. So again, multiple ways to find their way onto the field, but guys that I saw as more interior guys. And then Miles Frazier, who, again, another guard. So I brought in 3 guards back to back to back, based on my eval, but just trying to turn this room over, I'm kind of okay with that, especially knowing that they can flex out. So, and then I was very vocal about how in on Aeneas Peebles I was, and I think it was 3 picks. I think it started in like the back end of the 4th round where I was kind of itching to grab him, and I was like, no, I'll wait. I just kept eyeing him, and every pick that went by, I was like, if he doesn't make it to the next pick, and I'm pretty sure he got picked at like 189. Like I think I barely got him.
I missed out on him by 3 picks on one of my devastated.
I just like kept letting them slide, and there was actually a couple guys in this class, like I said, Wyatt Milam earlier, Jackson Dart is a guy could have gone for at 8, but just some guys that I let drop a little bit in the draft and ended up still being able to grab them, and those like felt so good because I feel like in years past I've taken that approach and I've just totally whiffed on guys and having to panic pick, and like I experienced that, but like this year I felt like I was really hitting it, just kind of letting guys fall to me. And anyway, I feel like Aeneas Peebles was like the biggest one. I think it was literally for 3 or 4 picks that I was like, itching to get him, and I still ended up with him. And then I think the Ravens is a great fit for him. Like I think he's got a great path as well to some early success. Another interior offensive lineman in Connor Colby. How do you not grab an Iowa interior offensive lineman? But I was a big fan of his game. I think he's definitely got some development that he needs to, focus on throughout his career early on. But I do like the upside. I do like his play style. And I feel like if those can translate pretty 1-to-1, then he should be able to battle in for a spot. Sebastian Castro is a guy that we kind of talked about a little bit off air, but didn't love the tape, but was kind of like, oh, I need a safety. I didn't hate him. Who do I want to make sure I can get on my team before the draft's over when I can really lock a guy in? And I was like, I'll just kind of go for a position that I feel like is kind of a position of need and a player that I don't, I liked. So just kind of got Castro. I was debating Castro or Restrepo at that spot. So I picked Castro and then I sweat out the rest of the draft, worrying because I thought, I'm like, there's no way Restrepo goes undrafted. And so as you can see, that was my first UDFA grab, but that's the rest of my draft. And I, like you said, a ton of crossover, and I'm excited to watch these guys and kind of see if we're right or wrong. But yeah.
And if this is a safe space, I kind of liked Aeneas Peebles better than I like TJ Sanders. So like that pick, I'm fully in with that. That's the biggest regret. When I mentioned how much I wished I could take back my late day 3, it's not adding Peebles because he fell so far. He was a guy that was like day 2 on my board. But yeah, I mean that might be my favorite pick of your whole draft, honestly.
Yeah, no, getting Peebles in the 6th when I think I had like a second round grade on him.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of let him fall, and there was some good value early on, and again, like D-line was a need. Like I was looking for D lineman, and I still kind of let him slide. And so I really feel like I won that one, and then I got him on, and then the draft went on. And the more I just kind of looked at that pick, I was like, I feel like I really won that one. That feels like a big, like if that guy pans out, that's going to be a big GM win for me. Like in kind of in my mind, where you wait until you get appropriate value on him, and you grab him kind of in line with where the NFL valued him, and that just those kind of picks make me feel really good. Like I have a good process, whether the NFL is right or wrong. At least I'm in line with the NFL. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I feel like like I said, I did a lot to turn over both of my trench rooms with players that I do like a lot, opposed to some of the guys that I had in there previously or were I just kind of grabbed because like I've mentioned before, I kind of bought into media hype, or he was just good value on my board, and I didn't really love the player. And this year I kind of wanted to focus on getting my guys. And that's where I have my legendary undrafted free agent class, because I learned I was shorting myself UDFA picks in past years. And so I used this year to make it up. So now I'm all caught up on my UDFAs. It just kind of a bulk of them was this year, but I just keep telling myself, this is my final 2 pick per round draft. This is like the last draft before I hit the big leagues. And I'm like, I really have a team that I'm working with to build. And so I wanted to bring in a bunch of camp buys. We're going to battle it out to see who can make this roster for the big push.
Oh, it's a bar fight for roster spots on this team.
Oh, it is. It's gonna be fun. I mean, you can just already see the rookies that I already have kind of slated preseason wise on the roster that we'll go through here in a minute. But you'll see like my practice squad list, and like I was telling Drew, I'm gonna have to cut 15 guys off this list. And the way I run my shadow team, when I cut a player, I can't go pick that player back up. And again, there's no free agency with shadow teams. So if a player gets cut, he's just gone. So I have to really go through the summer, and I'm excited to put myself through that process, even though it's not as intense as it sounds. I'm not with a team again, but it'll be fun to kind of keep up with OT. Like it was fun to keep up with OTAs. It'll be fun to watch team camps, and like this makes the shadow team stuff makes preseason games so fun, because you get to like see how your players are going to be utilized, if they're getting reps, or maybe you have a surprise guy that's not getting reps but is healthy, which shows that he's probably a more meaningful player on that team. And anyway, I'm pumped, to be honest. But let's get into this UDFA class. Like I said, I started out with Xavier Restrepo, receiver out of Miami. Went right back to the D-line with Luke Kandra, right back to O-line, the D-line with Thor Griffith and Jaw Joyner. Got Tommy Hill, just trying to kind of round out this cornerback room that I have. And I was a big fan of Tommy Hill. I thought he played long and physical like I like in my corners, kind of a fun UDFA shot for me. Eli Cox, another offensive lineman, just keep bringing in guards and centers and try and figure out this interior. I guess I didn't. Anyway, RJ Oben, who was a summer scouting crush of mine last year, when he just went undrafted. I still like the film. I think there's potential. I know he kind of fell off last year, but fine getting him in and watching him work. I think he actually ended up in Kansas City, that'll be fun to watch him develop in that room. I could be wrong there though. And the Holland Pierce ending up in Philly makes me so happy. I know we already talked about this, but grabbing him and then watching him land there, I'm so excited to watch him go. And he's a guy that I might have to stash. I might have a O-line heavy practice squad with just how many of the offensive linemen I ended up grabbing that I kind of want to watch develop and I feel good about long term. But we'll see how it goes. Nick Nash, the Triple Crown winner, I believe, the FBS Triple Crown winner, went undrafted, and I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't grab him because of that. Obviously, the film was fun. He's an explosive athlete, plays really well vertically. Don't really know what his ceiling is in the NFL, but when the Triple Crown guy goes undrafted and you're bringing a big class in anyway, bring him in. I've talked about all the time. My receiver room's already kind of busy, but getting him and Restrepo into the back end of that room right now feels really good. So kind of about it. Zy Alexander, just another corner that I like, just watching his tape, just a guy that I crushed on throughout the process. You got to bring those guys in my opinion. Same thing with Caden Prieskorn. I know we talked about him yesterday, so I won't stick on it, but just another guy, obviously with Jackson Dart. But just whenever I was watching that Ole Miss film, it was just he would show up and was a very reliable target, solid hands, just a fun tight end. So got to bring that guy in to this very shallow tight end room of mine. Sean Dolak, again, trying to round out this linebacker room of mine. Fun pick. I really am a big fan of Buffalo linebackers. I think they do a great job developing those guys there. I think he's very cerebral. I think he's very obviously smart player. I feel like he's going to make a team. He's going to be at worst a special teamer. Just excited to have him in the building, Nazir Stackhouse, another defensive lineman. Got to stack up that interior. And like I said, class is huge, but outside of here, really just another linebacker, some DB help. Corey Kiner, kind of a sneaky UDFA pick as I was going through the list.
I love
Seth Hennigan, another quarterback. Just that drive in the Senior Bowl, the game on Saturday. Another Senior Bowl guy, but man, that just stuck in my brain, and I just like a very, very consistent player, not a high ceiling guy, decent floor, but just like just a guy to round out this room that has nobody in it. But yeah, outside of that, just more D-line help, O-line help, some tight end help, just really trying to round out this roster in this final year, just kind of address where I felt like I was either shallow or had a need at the position. So that's where I ended up, like I said, going with a bigger class. I just used it to really fill out where I felt like that was kind of soft. So, but yeah, that's the long laundry list of UDFAs you brought in this year.
Yeah, it's funny too. Every time I go back to like how kind of different fundamentally our processes are, but how similar our outcomes end up being. Because we had a lot of overlap in our UDFA class as much as we did like our late day 3 too. And obviously you had, a couple more spots than I did, but like you had a couple guys that would have been my first ones out, that were like guys that if I'd had an extra 3 spots or whatever, like Oben and Jabbar Muhammad were the first 2 out for me. Like those guys both would have been on my list. I like, Zy Alexander was another guy who I had my eye on. Cantor was another guy I was looking at. Like it's all very, very similar lists right here. So it's always funny seeing, 2 people who are pretty fundamentally different, stylistically as evaluators, but we end up going after the same guys in an exercise like this.
No, it is good. That's again, it's some of the fun. You get to see who you kind of align with, and like you said, we value a lot of different things, but somehow we end up liking the same players, which is fun to kind of watch the difference in our processes. But it's a good time because I feel like it's interesting how we get to the same place a lot of the time, but just differently. But then, like you said, this is my practice squad. I looked up the actual rules for practice squads, which apparently is super convoluted. But the short of it is you get a maximum of 16 players of any position, but you need a minimum of 10 rookies or second-year players on your practice squad. So obviously, small team, a small group of veterans going into it, which is all these limited information guys. I did cut one guy who just isn't in the league. And then the list of rookies pushing for those spots. And then I'll watch kind of how the summer goes, watch the grades after these preseason games and let it sort itself out. And I will see who the 15 players that don't make the cut are. And obviously I'll take in, need and how I feel about players into account. Like I said, there's a couple of these guys who are probably on the outside looking in right now from a realistic roster perspective, but I just am kind of excited about like Holland Pierce, Jay Higgins is a guy that I'm excited to see how much he's able to get used early on. When I already talked about guys like RJ Oben, Marcus Ware is another fun guy who's just a small school offensive lineman who has a lot of fun flexibility and potential. But yeah, you can see Theo Weiss is the kind of the first guy out. Don't need a receiver. So as much as I like the profile, it's a crowded room for him to try and battle into. With guys already on the outside that have been in that room. And then Seth Hennigan, the last guy in, because I have no quarterbacks and I just can't. I'd watch that Senior Bowl game 14 more times, I think, just for that drive.
Can't quit on the backups,
I can't. I love me a tier B quarterback. Yep. I just can't get enough of it. As you can see with my current room of Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, and Michael Pratt. But yeah, so that's this is what the offense is looking like. We'll just kind of go through the guys I've started to start, and then you can obviously keep an eye on it if you want to talk about anybody else. But Jackson Dart's hopefully going to be the QB1, even though he's not going to play early on, because playing some is better than playing none, and that's what we've had so far. Bijan Robinson, RB1, obviously, with Cam Scatabo right behind him. Kenny McIntosh has just been sitting in that room holding the RB2 spot. You talked about the Seattle running back room yesterday, so I don't need to go into it, but Kenny McIntosh isn't really sniffing a lot of action in that room as it is, and that room just got a lot more crowded. So he could very easily be a casualty to open up another roster spot if needed. As now a full roster. We'll see. And then the receiver room that I talk about all the time and love so much, but was able, with the top four guys being pretty solid players, felt confident being able to throw a couple rookies in, a couple of rookie UDFAs in that I just like the ceiling of. Obviously, Jalen Coker's got me excited about my ability to grab UDFA wide receivers, so we'll see how this goes. But we can just ignore Troy Franklin if all three of our UDFAs said. I think that makes up for a second rounder. I feel pretty good about that. And then my tight end room, very shallow. Tucker Kraft's the only guy doing anything in that room right now, which is why I brought in a couple tight ends through, again, undrafted free agency, just to, again, get some competition in that room. If somebody's doing something, then they can end up on the roster because they are still contributing. And then my infamous offensive line room, which, as you can see, has 4 rookies out of the 9 spots available, which could very easily turn into 10 spots available if I drop a tight end position or a running back position, as I mentioned earlier. But like I said, Wyatt Milam at left tackle, even though I saw him as a guard, obviously the most draft capital invested into him in the room with that 3rd round pick. Miles Frazier, Christian Mahogany being my Detroit boys at guard. Hopefully one of them is able to fill into that center role. Honestly, the other guy can compete for that 6-man spot. I think they both have a good chance to at least contribute this season. Bo Limmer, who has had an interesting rookie year with no action early and ended up being the starter for a pretty solid run at the end of the season. Hopefully he's able to keep that position. And then like we talked about yesterday with the positional flexibility, if I have Bo Limmer and Christian Mahogany playing center, one of them is able to flex to guard. One of them can play center just as far as the scoring works. Now Warren McClendon actually got a decent run with the Rams last year as well. More of a spot, rotational guy, but still got some good runs. Actually scored out in a couple games, qualified in a couple games. So Detroit and LA really holding it down for me on the O-line right now. Then as you can see, kind of a hodgepodge on the bench with Luke Whippler, who I do feel like is a good football player. That room has just been very crowded on the interior for a very long time, but I think there's going to be a couple guys moving out of that room here pretty soon. So I'm excited to see him kind of break through, whether it's in his contract year or his 3rd year in the league. But I do still have faith, even though he was a 5th rounder. I feel like he's a good football player, and I could say the same for Logan Brown, who's a rookie. For the Vikings, I feel like he's going to be a good football player. I just don't know how soon he's going to see the field. But I do feel like he's going to be a fun project that will develop. And same thing for Connor Colby and San Fran. I feel like those are 3 great landing spots for 3 players that I'm a big fan of. So then Frank Crum in Denver, just a kind of a fun pick for me. Kind of needed a tackle. Just the big guy out of Wyoming. Loved his combine. Love his film and just the energy he plays with. Kind of hope he makes a name for himself down there in Denver. A really strong room again, but that's kind of where I'm at with my O-line. Like it kind of burns because I feel like I have good players. I feel like they just all went to crowded rooms. So hopefully we can get some of these guys start breaking through. But that's the offense.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, it's a little bit tougher for me going back to these players. You got 1 and 2 years because this is my first year really getting actual depth on a board, and really my first year I felt comfortable being a full evaluator. So I probably can't speak to all of these players, but it is, again, it's really funny for the offensive line trench guy to have the trenches be the weak point and have just an unbelievably stacked skill group all over the place. But yeah, I mean, as far as building through late picks and UDFAs goes, I think there's clearly some hits all over the place. That's where I think this exercise is the most fun, is seeing how you can hit on those really late low investment picks. And Bo Limmer's the big question right now. But yeah, throughout that whole room looks really solid to me. The quarterback thing, we'll butt heads on Jackson Dart too, but we already went through that whole thing. But I mean, yeah, the receiver room is stacked. I think the offensive line is the big question right now, which I know you I don't have to tell you about that. I'm sure you think about it every night. What this room
Can't
looks like.
sleep. Haven't slept in 3 years.
Up at night. It is really funny too, though, where you see how we see through real NFL teams where you have to invest just valuable draft capital to make a good offensive line, and now that translates into this exercise as well, where if you kind of kick can down the road and only invest late capital, it's hard to hit late on trench guys, especially on the opposite side of the ball.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Like you said, I like to think that I'm an O-line centric, football guy. And that is one of the only rooms that I haven't invested first or second round picks in are the tight end and offensive line room as far as the offense goes. So I'm ready for 7-on-7 season, but I have gone away from, and it's funny because I think it's some of my own hubris got in the way where I think year one felt like, oh, I'm an O-line guy. I can hit on some late round gems. I don't need to invest early. I'll go find my guys. And then year two, I feel like it was kind of just a mix of there were some guys that I felt confident on later on. And I think I just ended up falling more in love with those guys and just wanted to go get them later and didn't want to reach on them. Whereas, especially going into this next class, because I just didn't love this O-line class, talk about that a lot. So hopefully going into this next year, I can take some earlier round shots on some offensive linemen. But like I said, I really do have a lot of faith that some of these guys are going to work out. But I wouldn't hate, over investing in the offensive line and just letting that sort itself out over a couple seasons while I can focus elsewhere. Like my defense, which is very spotty. Let's talk about it. But like I said, to start off, we're turning over the defensive line room. And so as you can see, I kept 2 guys and I got rid of everybody else. And those 2 guys being Evan Anderson and Jalen Redmond is really funny because neither of them really get a lot of playing time, but when they play, they grade out really well. Like PFF loves these 2 guys, and they score well when they do. Obviously, they score well when they do get reps and they qualify because they are getting graded well. So that's why they were able to stay, because they gave me a reason to keep them around. Everyone else outside of Tuli Pulotu, who just got moved spots, just really didn't give me much. That's why you see 5 rookies in here, and we'll just talk about again TJ Sanders and Shamar Stewart, who we can't talk about when I was going through my draft haul, but I am hoping that Shamar Stewart can contribute early for the Bengals. I know the Trey Hendrickson drama is up in the air, and we'll see how that goes, even though he's having his own contract disputes because Cincinnati's awesome. Love it. But, yeah, just hoping he can be a fun force. And TJ Sanders on the other side, again, like I said, that 3 to 5 flexibility. I feel like they both kind of have that a little bit, though one's more of a run player, one's a more flexible guy, in my opinion. But as I said, I switched to more of a 3-4 look. I know obviously this isn't going on to any actual football fields, but as far as, scouting and evaluating personnel and positional value and for my defense, I kind of got to focus on something. So as I've said, I went with an actual defense coming out of this draft, and this is how we ended up. So we're going to have I want to have a pretty flexible front 3 to 5, I should say, where I want these defensive ends to be true DNs that can play B to C gap, but aren't like the stand-up outside linebacker. They are true hand in the ground defensive end guys with a true nose tackle. I think Evan Anderson fits that role great. I'm excited to see Darius Alexander, especially if they let him be flexible between the guards. That'll be really fun to watch him work. But as you can see, more of an edge heavy room, but it's because these guys can kind of play across the defensive front. And that's what I was really going for. Have ultimate flexibility up front and versatility. And then I have added the Viper position, which is the edge position, but it's that linebacker, whether it's a walk down linebacker or a coverage linebacker, can kind of go both ways in that aspect. So the outside linebacker version of an edge player. So moving forward with my edge evaluations and everything that I do, I'll be breaking it up like this, where my linebackers, as I will grade them, will be true off-ball linebackers, while I'll have this Viper position kind of lumped in with the defensive ends, if that makes sense. And I honestly am still kind of torn. I might evaluate them all individually, where it's, I have my defensive ends, my Vipers, and my linebackers. So we're just still trying to figure out how I'm going to do that, but that's why I kind of wanted to get that done. But as you can see, Tui Pulotu, who's been kind of the guy on my team since I brought him in, had kind of a down year last year, but I wasn't crazy bad. I feel like there was a lot of rep sharing on that defense that kind of hurt him over the long term, and he also had some injury issues. So, but one of my first guys, one of my best players in year one, so always will have a soft spot for him. But he's my starting Viper right now, and that's where Jack Sawyer landed. And like I talked about earlier, I feel like he's kind of good in that role. So we'll see how that goes. But moving to my off-ball linebackers, I have Peyton Wilson and Ivan Pace Jr. coming back. I did draft Ivan Pace Jr. in the 6th round, even though he went undrafted, and I don't regret that at all. Another great late hit, in my opinion. And then Peyton Wilson actually didn't get any reps at the beginning of the season last year as a rookie, and as the season went on, got a lot more run, got a lot more, just a lot more playing time, but it was very situational. But he ended up they both barely missed qualifying. Ivan Pace with his injury issues and Peyton Wilson just with a late start. But I think, next year they're both going to be very big contributors for their respective defenses. And so I feel really good about that room. As I said, just kind of bringing in some late round linebackers, trying to fill out the back end of it, where Cam Jones, I feel like will have a bigger role next year. He got a ton of reps in that week 18 game against the Broncos. I think he started that game. But so anyway, and then moving to corner, I have my 2 perimeter corners in Quinyon Mitchell and Cam Smith, and I have Cooper DeJean playing my devil position, which is just that nickel corner safety flex player, as the other flex spot in my 3-4 defense. So that's an outside linebacker, but it's more of a coverage outside linebacker nickel player, which is why Cooper DeJean's in that role. As you can see, I got, rookie Kobe Bryant in there. I talked about how I feel like he's a great guy to just have on this defense. I feel like he's a pretty flexible player, very physical player, just fits everything I love about DBs. Got drafted him in the 7th round, even though I believe he also went undrafted. So that's going to be another fun one to watch. And then to wrap this up with Jaden Hicks and Sebastian Castro as my safeties. My safety room is very scary still, but hopefully Jaden Hicks gets some run this year. But that is the defense, and that felt really long-winded, but here we are.
Yes, it's funny that I guess the D-line being very, very young, maybe that's why you say it, but like calling the defense suspect. I love the defense a lot more than I like the offense. It helps that I was a big fan of a lot of the rookies you brought in. I was a big Shamar Stewart guy, big Darius Alexander guy, big Aeneas Peoples guy, so obviously I'm going to be a little bit higher on them too. But like if you cover up that Jack Sawyer name in the Viper group, like I was huge on all 3 of the guys in that group. I was a big Tuipulotu guy. I loved Adisa Isaac. I loved Austin Booker. I know some of those guys haven't been quite, lived up to quite as much as we wanted them to be so far, but like I was a huge fan of those guys in the whole draft process. Obviously the linebacker room is high quality. The corner room is potentially your best behind receiver to me, talent wise on this whole group. I thought Jaden Hicks, again, pretty limited reps, but I thought he was outstanding in the reps that he did get for Kansas City last year. So, obviously the depth at safety is concerning, but if you're going to be your only safety guy, I thought he's been pretty awesome so far. So maybe it's just, a bias for me liking, having draft crushes on a lot of the guys you added again, where we kind of end up aligned on a lot of these players. But just from my previous evaluations, I loved a lot of the guys, you've got on this defense. And I think, you've got the right building blocks in the right places to me. I think the spots that are weak are the spots that are easy to fix to me right now.
Well, and that's how I ended up in this scheme, is where I felt like my defensive line room was just weird. Like I felt like I had a weird mix of bodies in there, which is why I kind of went with this. Hey, let's turn some of you into outside linebacker, like actual outside linebackers, and move some of you to, flexible defensive end style players. And it really made the rooms feel a lot better, obviously, because I really leaned into that with this draft class, bringing those 5 guys into the room. And I feel like I injected youth into the right spots where, again, I just kind of getting some depth in linebacker spots with Jack Sawyer, and some of the other rookies I brought in, as far as UDFAs go, and just to try and make sure we can solidify those rooms. But this, like you said, the Viper room, I feel like has the most upside of probably my entire defense. It's just we haven't really seen a lot of these players get any run, as far as, Isaac and Booker, and then Thule, like I said. The Chargers under Brandon Staley, I feel like he was really working into a good role. And then with the shift in leadership there, I'm very concerned to see kind of where his career goes. I feel like he may sign a second contract and not in LA, but we'll see how that goes, just based on how his usage went last year. Excited to see. I think Booker was another one of those players that started picking up late in the season, so I'm interested to see whether they get another new regime, if he gets some run. And I think Jack Sawyer is a very Steelers player, so that pick felt great to me, where I'm like, the Steelers are going to love this kid. But yeah, I mean, having Jack Sawyer and Peyton Wilson, I feel like I can have a couple young guys that can be the core of that defense moving forward as it gets a little older. But as you said, I mean, this cornerback room, like, I don't know how it came together, a trench guy, but my wide receiver and corner rooms feel very good. Antonio Johnson's a tough guy to have on this roster. And like I said, Cam Smith, the second round guy, my second round bust, who's done nothing so far in his career, but I feel like is a good football player. But again, guys like Kobe Bryant, a guy like Dwight McGlothern, who I feel like, even though it was a UDFA, he has really good film out there. Just waiting for him to kind of break into that room. Just needs something out of Jaden Hicks, but because it looks good when he's out on the field, like you said. Just need to get him, find some playing time for him. And then we'll see how the safety room goes. But yeah, like you said, I mean, that Viper spot, honestly, my linebacker room and then my outside, my perimeter corners all feel really good to me. I feel like I don't have to do too much there moving forward. Just kind of let it shake out. Maybe bring in some depth guys for the long term. But really, 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 really hoping these rookies hit on the defensive line. I'd love to just kind of do a 1-year turnaround of that room with how much I invested in it. I mean, even outside of the guys that I drafted, I brought in so many UDFA defensive linemen. Like, I really wanted to kind of sort this problem out in 1 year and come into, not this season, but next season feeling really good about that room outside of this year, feeling like it was a major need. So, but that's how we're looking on the roster. I feel like I said, overall, brought in a lot of young talent this year, obviously, with the massive UDFA class and really trying to hit on some guys in the draft, just at positions of need. You never want to draft for need as an actual team, but when I don't get free agency, I feel like you have to draft for need at certain points, and just hit those rooms. And I feel like, looking ahead, if we can get a Jackson Dart hit, if Cam Scatterbo can be a solid player, I feel like the core of this offense is pretty locked in for the relative long term. I still keep talking about, I know I took Jackson Dart at 22, but I will be coming out of the first round with a quarterback in 2026. Like I'm only going to have the one first round pick, but it's going to be a quarterback if there's anything that I can do about it. I've talked about it all the time about how my highest pick ever has been the 5th overall pick. I've never really been in a great position to get a top quarterback, but I feel like I'll be able to get my guy, one of my top quarterbacks, one of the 2 guys that I'm really hoping to bring in. I feel like I can do that in 2026. So between Jackson Dart and one of those guys that I bring in next year, I feel like I can feel good about the quarterback room moving forward. And then again, with Bijan back there, feel really good about that, especially with Zach Robinson in Atlanta. Just a great situation for him. And Scatterbo, if he can kind of be in Jackson Dart's pocket and turn into the, a number 2 for Tyrone Tracy over the long term in New York, I feel like that's a great position for my RB2 to be, as far as the committee goes. And then we've talked about this receiver room, but it feels like it's just kind of been too easy to stack talent there for me. I haven't really tried, and I know it's the 2 first round picks and a second, But that's 3 UDFAs in there that I feel really good about as well. So that wide receiver room feels really fun. A good balance, like a true balance of talent that's in there. And then just that would really lock up the core of this offense where I can just my offensive picks can just go to offensive linemen and we can just turn over that room next year. But yeah, just really looking through this class when I was evaluating it, when I was kind of wrapped up with my big board, defense was the strength in my opinion. So I just leaned into that, really invested on that side of the ball. Gonna hopefully sort out some depth issues and some just starting level talent issues on that side of the ball. And then coming out 2026, we can hopefully ground out this offense and just honestly be pretty set from a youth perspective as we get into some of these guys hitting their second contracts. So, but yeah, feeling really good about where we're at right now.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, it's obviously the kind of dichotomy between where mine's at, just starting out being so bare bones. I don't really have a roster fill out going to this. It's kind of whiplash judging between the two. But yeah, it's bittersweet because it's like there's so many prospects that I loved that I wish I could have had the chance to draft. Like I wish I'd started this earlier. But I started it when I found out about it, so I can't take those back. But I wish I could have done the 23 and 24 drafts like you did. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see now that you're in the big leagues, or you will be, I guess, after this year. I'm excited to see how your team fares, especially now that we're doing this together, this constant check-ins and kind of going through the whole process together. It'll be fun to see how your squad does.
Yeah, no, we broke 30 teams. I think we actually might have gotten to 32 teams in the big league for this season. So I'm interested to see how we're going to break it up, next year for the guys that we have moving up into that league. But I'm interested to see where I land. Yeah, because I built this team and I have experienced the same thing. We're looking back into some of these guys, like guys that I had crushes on looking into past drafts, like Rashawn Slater, Creed Humphrey, especially looking at my offensive line room. I'm like, man, I wish I could have gotten Trey Smith, just some of these guys that have been some of these later hits that I had crushes on when I was watching through the film. And it's just like, would have loved to have that guy. Definitely would have hit on that guy. But again, as it fills out and getting into year 2 feels a lot better already. And like, honestly, year 3 is a lot. Like, I know I brought in a lot of UDFAs, but just really just to make it up. Like, this is where my team's supposed to be volume wise. And like, it's crazy to feel like this is only my 3rd draft. I feel like I still haven't really done much team building, and I already have I'm going to have a filled out roster in P squad. So I'm excited to watch your team grow. And that's why I kept saying, when we were talking about your squad, I'm excited to watch it grow and kind of see which direction you take it. Because I just I let my preference in player really drive my team. And that's why I really wanted to lean into that this year, because in my last couple of drafts, I feel like there's been picks where I've gotten off of that path. So I really just went with hey, he's almost gone. I think he's not even on the roster right now. So
he's on the P squad, yeah.
We've almost made it. Sheesh. Luke Kandra redeemed me.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll never live it down. But yeah, no, it's interesting because I'm gonna try and just focus on my guys and just see where that takes me over my next couple of seasons. But I feel really good about this class, and I think it's because I did that. Where I came out of my previous drafts with just my eye on a couple of players, like I don't feel like that's gonna pan out. I feel like I'll like a lot of these guys until like the outside of the 4th round, because we already talked about the 4th round's a bunch of question marks, but that's what the 4th round's for. It's valuable question marks. But looking at like my UDFAs, I feel really good about them. Looking at my 7th round is kind of like, I love Kobe Bryant, don't love Castro, but really I just feel great about my haul, and I'm excited to see how the summer goes. And I'm excited to check in on your squad, as we come into the preseason and throughout the preseason and see who's getting the snaps, who's grading well, who's getting the snaps and not grading well, who's not getting the snaps, which means, they might be a significant contributor in the regular season. It's always so funny to see some of the guys that get high volume snaps in the preseason grade out really well and then just vanish in the regular season. And it's like, well, you can give him a chance. Like we've seen what he can do. You just let him try. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to like experience it with you, man. It's gonna be good.
I can't wait. It's gonna be so much fun.
But yeah, let's get out of here. I think, moving forward, let's start talking about some 2026 draft prospects. How about it?
I can't wait. That's what we're here. That's the real meat and potatoes of this whole thing, right? Start diving into these prospects we're actually going to get next year.
Now that you know who's on your team, you can figure out who you want on your team. Now that we can get into the draft process, we can jump in with the shadow team mindset, as well as obviously looking at everybody. But we can focus on something where some guys we're looking to bring in, what positions we're looking to attack.
Garrett ends with Nussmeier.
Nah, man, it's about the club. Join the club.
Again, this thing it's tough. They're 1-2 on my big board right now for 26. I can't pick between the two. I love them both so much.
Again, if I don't come out of the first round with Garrett Nussmeier or Cade Klubnik, Jeremiah Love fell way too far.
What are your roles like? What are you rolling between? Did you only get one first round pick? Is it just 1 through 32? Or
that's what I gotta look into. And there's a lot of people do it a bunch of different ways. Because technically right now I could make this a Madden team because I'll have enough guys to fill out a full roster as long as they're all in the NFL and in the game. And there's other guys there's a guy that I know brought up in the community on X that everyone should join, whether you have a team or not. That brought up because the league hasn't been a full 32 teams, he's been doing this whole formula, but essentially taking his spot where he finishes in the fantasy league that we have, the Shadow League. And he's turning that into an actual draft spot per the NFL draft order rules, which I kind of like that method. But really, you're trying to find 1 to 32 where you're picking with that one pick. So I don't know what process I'm going to go through. Well, I kind of like the idea of where I finish in the league, in my group, and then mathing it out to get my spot. But then I also worry because because in group 2, it's all second and third years. So now I'm kind of in the top end of that group just because I have more bodies. So if I finish well, I don't want to pick I don't want to pick in the 20s right now. I love the idea of doing a Madden team. It just is a lot of work. So we'll see. A lot of options.
There we go.
But yeah, man, I'm excited to get into some film. I'm watching film tonight. I'm going to watch for next week because we already know who we're watching. So, but I'm excited. We'll talk then. We'll talk some draft prospects. We'll get into summer scouting, I guess. And we're not going to go through the traditional, position by position every week. We're just kind of picking. We're going to alternate selecting 5 players per week that we will watch, and then we'll talk about. And they can be all the same position. They can be a bunch of random guys that maybe I've watched and I just liked. Maybe I'm looking at positions that I'm looking at for my shadow team in the next draft. But I think we're just going to kind of go pretty randomly through a bunch of prospects and just kind of what we're watching, and you guys can kind of follow along with us. But
I guess funnily enough too, I'll be watching guys tonight that you're going to talk about on my channel next week. So little back and forth there.
I'm excited. I have to hit. I have to get a first round quarterback again, and it's got to be a hit.
So. That's a lot of pressure for 1 through 32 to be able to land in range for one of these guys.
No, I know. You're telling me. I've been struggling to get him at 22, and now I could be picking even later. So,
but at least you've had good luck before with draft picks. So.
Yeah, it's never failed me. Hasn't failed me yet. Maybe I should just keep rolling die.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. All right. Well, let's get out of here. I'm excited to talk to you next week about some draft prospects. You're picking the list, so we're talking Drew's guys next week.
There we go.
So we'll see y'all then. Thanks for tuning in. Drew, plug your stuff and let's get out of here.
Oh yeah. You can find everything I do at Iron City Film on Twitter, X, whatever it is. Just started with some writing for the Titans over at Titan Sized, fan-sided Titan coverage team. A lot of nerdy film breakdowns. That's pretty much all I write about because I'm a nerd. And all the film work, getting out tons of clips, cut-ups. We're deep in the 2026 draft weeds right now over there on Twitter, X, whatever it is. So, find all my stuff over there.
No, it's great. And you said you've already been posting clips. I was watching through some of them today as I'm kind of gearing up to watch some film tonight, just kind of getting in the mood. So Go follow Drew. It's great content. Great analysis, and not only just because he agrees with me a lot of the time, but he does a great job. Good process, and like I said, we're both trying to be as transparent with our processes as possible. So make sure you reach out to him with any questions you might have as you listen to our conversations. And I know he's always down to talk prospects. So, but thanks again for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys about some prospects next week.